Hello and welcome back, and did you see this coming? I certainly didn't. Today we're going to be comparing UGREEN and UniFi, two brands I didn't think on any Venn diagram were even close when it came to NAS. However, once you look at things in the last year or so, you suddenly realise that both of these brands actually formally entered the world of network attached storage publicly to end users about a year ago. These guys launching on crowdfunding in spring 2024, but eventually being available for general retail in autumn 2024. And around the same time, these guys launching their first NAS, and 1 year on, these guys have got 5 different NAS solutions, and these guys have got about 7 or 8 different NAS solutions. And now is the time for many of you who are looking at brands like, I don't know, Synology and wondering, is the writing on the wall, looking at these two to be your next big network upgrade. Now, let's talk first and foremost about the old money, because even though both of these are providing NAS solutions, I think it would be fair to say, more on this later, that they've gone wildly different directions. They've actually both gone for lower entry points in terms of pricing than the majority of the kind of status quo NAS market out there, like Synology, QNAP, Acertor, TerraMaster and more. But nevertheless, they've still gone a very different direction. Now, UniFi have gone down the road of rolling out really cost-effective solutions, both in terms of the hardware, but more importantly for this section, in terms of the price. Example, the recently released UNAS 2, sorry, I've got a bit of a cold at the moment, the UNAS 2 rocks out at $199. It's a 2-bay with 2.5 gigabit Ethernet via PoE and an adapter included, 2 hard drive bays, a quad-core ARM processor and 4 gig of memory. That scales up to their largest currently available model, the 8-bay rack mount, the UNAS Pro 8, which has got a quad-core ARM, has got 16 gig of memory, it's got 8 SATA bays, 2 M.2 bays and 3 10 gig bays. $799 is a Billy bargain. Now, UGREEN, on the other hand, have rocked out across their different solutions up until recently, have got entry-level ARM-based devices, but an 8-core ARM device with 8 to 16 gig of memory, rocking out about $200 or $250. And their biggest model, this one here in desktop, the DXP 8800 Plus, I'm available at parties, is an i5 10-core, 8 times SATA, 2 times Gen 4 M.2, 2 times 10 gig, 2 times Thunderbolt 4 and PCIe upgradable device. That rocks out about $1,200 to $1,300. So way more expensive, but you've really got to look at what you're getting for that money, because it has to be stated that in terms of price point, there is no denying it. UniFi win in terms of the price point on their rollout price, in the hopes they have to make you expand into their ecosystem. Whereas UGREEN are offering a low price point for the hardware, the value. So it really comes down to, do you care about the number, in which case these guys, or do you care about the hardware you get for that number, which would be these guys? But we can't talk about something like the hardware without actually digging into it, because both of these brands, although they have larger portfolios of other products and solutions from their years and years in the market, if we focus on NAS, it has to be said that these guys are all about desktop, nothing about rack mount about them. They arrive with, again, better CPUs across the bill, from ARM to great Alder Lake N100 and N305 CPUs, all the way up to Intel i5 12th generation processors, with Gen 4 architecture there as well. SD card readers, PCIe upgrade slots, they cover a lot of the bases. And generally, if you go through their portfolio, there's a price difference of about 150 nicker between each solution, and each time the hardware graduates significantly. Now, with UniFi, they arrive now in both desktop and rack mount forms. The scalability and upgradability is far more limited, it has to be said, but even within those boundaries, as mentioned, the 3 times 10 GBE rack mount is something to behold. Alongside that, although these systems are far more upgradable and scalable in terms of their hardware, these devices just give a little bit more, particularly in the rack mount form, with a promised large-scale enterprise device shown off at one of their events recently, that either is going to arrive at the end of this year or start of the next, which is really going to stretch their muscles into the larger scale SMB and enterprise area. And that is just something UGREEN, for one reason or another, still don't seem to be courting. They're doing a really great job in Home Lab, in prosumer, and early SMB, photo video editors, stuff like that. But anything with the word business or enterprise engaged with, maybe you don't care about that, but they are not covering that audience, whereas these guys are. And we mentioned ecosystems. We also have to highlight that this device here, the amount of hardware you're getting in all of their range, that hardware, although you can't get it in their NAS devices, the rest of their ecosystem, such as UniFi switches, UniFi cameras, UniFi routers, UniFi adapters, expands a lot of that out. So the money you save by buying this dedicated storage appliance could then be spent on the rest of that ecosystem. So it comes down to you about where your budget is going to be spread, and do you want to go for an all-in-one solution, or do you go for one where elements of your workflow, elements of your network capabilities are spread across different devices. Bottom line, at least in terms of NAS, the hardware portfolio is more powerful and more expandable on the UGREEN side, but on the UniFi side, you have definitely got good base level hardware for storage, and you can scale out with the money that you save towards other devices in their portfolio. Judging these guys on software, it really is going to be about where we draw the line. Because if we only look at NAS software and we only look at the software that their NAS solutions arrive with, UGREEN win in spades. To put it into perspective, UniFi focuses quite exclusively on the storage, the S word of network attached storage, NAS. Again, fluid, accessible, secure, stable storage is what they work with and what they provide. And fair play to them. You've got your multiple RAID arrays, you've got encrypted storage options, you've got snapshots, you've got easy, accessible, secure sharing capabilities, authorized and encrypted levels of security for accessing users locally or remotely. You don't have to use UI services, but you can. And if you do choose to use it, you've got other layers that you can build in there. However, once you step outside of traditional storage, ultimately the holding of the data, and you move into wanting to do things with it, again, the UniFi NAS system requires you to use other devices, be they UniFi's ecosystem or a third party. UGREEN, on the other hand, their NAS software just does more. It does everything that their software does in terms of the NAS storage side. There is no feature I could find in UniFi's software included with NAS devices that isn't possible on UGREEN. But then they build on top of it, build on top of snapshots and RAID stuff and sharing and encryption, and then they move into virtual machine deployment, container deployment there, multifaceted backup synchronization options that expand beyond those available from UniFi. On top of that, their software allows for just little things that just aren't available here. So for example, a lot of their devices have got M.2 slots. Some of these have got M.2 slots for little SSDs, but on this you can only use it for caching, and on this you can use it for caching and storage pools. This device arrives with scalability with things like using PCIe upgrade cards on some of their devices. There's even plans right now in their next software update to not only allow UGREEN's DAS or direct attached storage USB boxes to act as storage expansions, but also allow for the USB 4 and Thunderbolt 4 connectivity to work directly, allowing you to directly interface with this device via Thunderbolt, not just over the network or remotely over the internet. These are just things that aren't available or possible right now on the UniFi architecture because they've gone for that highly efficient hardware baseline. Bottom line, in terms of the software, there's just more that can be done right now on that singular UGREEN device than you can on UniFi once again, unless you expand to their ecosystem. Then you can take advantage of things like UniFi's surveillance application, Protect, something that's only available on their NVR and Dream Machine and router devices. Again, a lot of that management, a lot of that, what I do with my data requires more of a spend in their ecosystem, something that isn't needed on the UGREEN side. So just keep that in mind with the software. This does more out the gate, but this allows you to expand more into an ecosystem to do more outside of NAS. Next up, let's talk about security, because even though both of these brands have only had NAS solutions in the market for give or take a year or so, it has to be said that both of them have been around long enough that we need to talk about the security of your data inside these NAS ecosystems here. Now, there is simply going to be users in the comments that aren't going to want to put their data into a Chinese NAS. Now, you can have your reasons. I won't agree with all of them, but I'll say right now, for one reason or another, there are just users that aren't going to be in love with the idea of putting their data in a Chinese NAS and would prefer to put their data into a NAS built in Taiwan, because that's where UniFi's NAS systems are built. Now, on top of that, we can talk about security provisions, encryption, two-factor authentication. We can talk about security management. We can talk about how much goes into firmware updates, how much goes into things like bounty programs, how much goes into security advisories. And in that area, UniFi take the lead. They've got a longer experience in network switches, in router devices, ultimately a longer time of being held accountable for people's data. And I think that is going to carry a lot of weight for those that are looking between these two brands in terms of security. Now, that is not a diss to these guys. They have yet to have, at the time of recording, a large-scale security incident. They have yet to put a foot wrong in the world of NAS or on their other devices, from what I could see online. But because of that, people don't know how tried and tested they are and how they will react to a security incident. And that is an unknown. It could be absolutely fine. But there's still no avoiding that no NAS system is perfect. I don't care what brand you mention. Vulnerabilities in Linux, vulnerability via SSH, how applications are put together, and the way people deploy these solutions, sometimes quite unsafely, can lead to vulnerabilities, and the brands have to step in to sew up the holes or close doors that Linux perhaps has left open. And UniFi have just got more experience in that area, and I think that carries a lot of weight here. Also, although a lot of the stuff that I'm describing here is because of the history of their switches and their routers and more, it has to be said that a lot of that history and legacy is extended onto the NAS solutions. UGREEN, on the other hand, until they've been in the market a little bit longer, I don't think anyone can comfortably say that a UGREEN NAS, based on all the data we have, is as secure as a UniFi NAS. It doesn't make them insecure, it just means these guys have got more history and legacy to point at. It really does just come down to what you're looking for your NAS to do. If you are buying a device purely as storage, so you can move away from the cloud and take ownership of your data, that's really your main focus, I think these guys are the ones for you. UniFi have done a really good job to package what may seem at a glance to be a very simple old school storage system, but have actually really nailed the fundamentals really, really well in their NAS solutions. But their NAS solutions are at their best when they're deployed within a UniFi ecosystem. They're not dependent on that, but there's no avoiding that to really make the most of their systems, they work at their best within UniFi ecosystems. UGREEN, on the other hand, are providing you a much more confident, a much more capable, and a much more powerful NAS solution, a much more modern NAS solution in terms of NAS software and capabilities, and as people's demands of what they want a NAS to be able to do, what the benchmark, the expectation of what a NAS is in 2025, they provide a solution that fits that mold more. And there's going to be people that say, I only buy a NAS for the storage. That's what the S is for. And you're right to a point. But that's just you. And there are users out there that want their data to be run in containers, want their data to be Plex and Jellyfin servers, want their data to be used for photo video editing on the fly. And that's what these guys bring, a more evolved solution. And if that sounds more interesting to you, then stability and simplicity to a point, then these guys are going to be the ones for you. Keep in mind, of course, availability for these devices will vary depending on which region in the world you are. I would say UniFi have a broader and larger world availability, although sometimes their newer products are out of stock pretty darn quick, but UGREEN are closing the gap on that a little bit. Now, if you found this video helpful and if you want to support what we do, please use the links in the description to get hold of your NAS, be it UGREEN or UniFi today. Using those links below will allow us at NAS Compares, it's just me and Eddie here, to get a small commission on anything you buy via those links, and it allows us to keep doing what we do. Supporting content creators, and particularly supporting people like us that make the free advice sections, make the forums, make the guides, write the articles, the most passive way you can support us is to use those links. You don't have to, but they're there if you want to. You can support us via Ko-Fi or Patreon, but I know that's not everyone's cup of tea. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this guide. There should be a written guide as well below over on NAS Compares that you can check out, that no doubt goes into more detail. But apart from that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.